Hello students, this is the second video on Egypt after the earlier one on Isis and Osiris. This one should be shorter. I gave out a handout last week that is not in the textbook called the Book of Thoth. The Secret Teachings is what the Book of Thoth is. This was compiled by Bruce Gardner, who is an Egyptologist and who sort of rewrote the stories in modern language, modern English, makes them very understandable. A good resource. I've used his work often. And this is the story of Prince Setna. Now, this is a real prince. This is the Setna the First that comes from the late period of ancient Egypt, or Setna Kamwaz, who is the son of Ramses the Great. And he was a great magician, and Egypt is full of magic. Egyptian mythology is full of magic. The art of sorcery is very important. It's very real. It's talked about in the texts almost scientifically in real terms. So it's not the sort of magic that we think of today. Most people believed in paranormal phenomena, in magical abilities, in the ability to train and become a magician. This is represented, of course, in the book of Genesis when Moses takes on the Egyptian magicians in Pharaoh's court as a test when he's trying to free the Israelites before they are set free and go across the Red Sea. You may be familiar with that story. Anyway, Setna learns of an earlier magician prince called Nekhra-Khepta. That's a difficult name to say. And Nekhra-Khepta had tried to, or had succeeded in retrieving this mysterious Book of Thoth. And of course, Thoth is one of the gods of the Egyptian pantheon. So he learns of this earlier quest, and he basically repeats it to the same sort of detrimental results. He visits the tomb with his brother to retrieve the book. Is warned by the spirits. The story of Nekhra-Khepta, who was tricked into hunting the Book of Thoth in his time. The book was in a series of boxes at the bottom of the Nile, which he manages to retrieve by cunning. But it does nothing but bring sorrow to the person that retrieves it. And this is a very common story when we come across mystical tomes or books. Often they have, or grimoires, or magical books of sorts. They often have consequences to those who discover them in a lot of different stories. And you know, the retrieval's kind of interesting. Killing of the guardian, the snakes and the scorpions, the serpent that cannot die. Hopefully you enjoyed those stories. The first page of the Book of Thoth, after he looks at it, has to do with the power of heavens and earth, understanding animals. The Egyptians had a strong belief in the ability to form bonds with the animal kingdom. Second page has to do with the secrets of the sun and the moon with all their gods. And of course he ingests the words of the spells with beer, which is interesting. It's a good way to do magic, isn't it? With a bit of brew. Then we have, the beginning of the consequences from the first story, the death of the son, Merab. And his Ka, now when you hear the word Ka, it loosely means his spirit, and it would be a dead person's spirit. So this is the essence of the human that survives death in the Egyptian belief system. And it's a word that's crossed over into many different religious circles, including Buddhism and Hinduism. His Ka tells him the cause of death. Thoth and Amun-Ra will bring sorrow and punishment for stealing the book. And of course the death of the wife is then followed by the death of Neferkeptah. But Setna still wants the book. He's challenged to a game of drafts, again, the game of drafts, which seems important to the Egyptians. That would be checkers, I think, in common verbiage, at least in the American verbiage. He's challenged to a game of drafts by the Ka of Neferkeptah. This is the spirit or essence of Neferkeptah. Wins the first 3 games and sinks. Sorry, Neferkeptah wins the first 3 games and sinks Setna up to his head. And he has to send his brother to get the amulet of Ptah. And again, these sacred objects are very important to these stories. They're esoteric powers that they yield. And of course, this is the way that he wins the game and escapes. Neferkeptah curses Setna, and Ramses tells him to return the book. It's not worth the trouble that it brings. At this point he meets Tabubua, the daughter of the high priest. He's lured to her tower. She makes him divorce his present wife and kill his children. Rough. Of course, when he embraces her, she turns into a corpse and he suddenly finds himself a beggar in the desert. He returns to the city and finds or sees his wife and children alive. Whether that means their Ka or the fact that the high priest's daughter was lying, we don't know. Neferkeptah's condition for forgiveness is that he must unite the bodies of his family. Setna must find the bodies of his family and bury them all together. And so he sets off on this task, which he's only able to do with the help of an old man. And he's able to put the bodies together and reseal the tomb. And this is very important to ancient Egyptians. The rituals of the dead are sacrosanct. And this is something that also spills over into the Greek period, as we can see in the Greek plays like Oedipus. Humans have to have full burial rites and have to be buried on sacred familial ground in order for them to journey into the afterlife. And then the tomb is resealed until the return of Osiris, and that's stated at the end. So in the Egyptian mythological stories, Osiris becomes a Christ figure, a savior, a dying and rising savior. And this was something seized on by people like James Frazier, who started to make those comparisons that all of the ancient religions are full of rising and dying, or dying and rising, let's get it the right way around, saviors. So you have, Krishna, you have Osiris, you have Christ, and there are many, many more. Tammuz is another one. And their stories are very similar. They are ritually killed, and then they rise, usually after 3 days, and then their risen status then becomes a salvific form by which people can then find solace. So it's a theme that sort of goes through a lot of these stories. The Book of Thoth, by the way, is never found, and a lot of people have come up with different theories as to what it was and where it might be. A lot of people have claimed it. Aleister Crowley, the famous magician of the 20th century, did a lot of work on the Tarot. He came up with a system called Thelema, a system of magic where he fused Eastern and Western ideas. And he wrote the Book of the Law, which he claims is the same as the Book of Thoth. Also, Prospero's book in the Shakespeare play The Tempest, a great mysterious work that people are trying to find, is often equated with the Book of Thoth. And a lot of mystery books, spell books, grimoires, have been associated with Thoth ever since. And he's sort of become a god of magic and sorcery. So that's basically the story of the Book of Thoth. I thought it'd be an interesting diversion from the other stuff in the textbook on Egypt. For the rest of this video, I'm going to post a image of all the gods of Egypt with numbers on them. And I know you've chosen one for your task this week, which you'll be sending to me via D2L. What I would like you to do is identify your god and just see if you can apply the right number. So this is a quiz of sorts, and you can do it through the comments section on the video. If you have a YouTube account and are able to comment, or you can send it to me via D2L. But I'd like to know if you can identify your god on this little chart. So let's see if you can do that. I'll be back next week with a curriculum update, and then back on the 30th of March with the rest of the semester's material. See you then. Stay safe.